probably seen this car lurking in the background in some of the other videos. Well, now you are finally going to get a formal introduction, because today this gets to be the star of the show. I wasn't doing any videos when I first bought this car, so I'm going to give you a quick overview of the history on this, and we're going to look at some photos while I'm doing that. So I actually bought this car from eBay a few years ago, and I wasn't even the actual winner of the auction. I ended up being the high bidder on it. The reserve wasn't met, so I just kind of wrote it off. The next day, the seller called me up and wanted to know if I was still interested in it. I made him an offer on it that was quite a bit less than what his reserve was. He called me back the next day, and we made a deal on it. So I ended up with this. I was looking for a black 30 or 31 coupe, so this is exactly what I wanted. Surprisingly, the car ended up being nicer than what I was expecting, which is almost never happens on eBay. So the history I got on it was, this was a classic car dealer, and they actually took this car in trade. So he didn't know a whole lot about it either. From looking over the car, I can tell that it's had a pretty amateur restoration at some point in its life. It's had, I believe, one repaint. They didn't do a great job on it. It's old lacquer and it looks okay, but they didn't even lift the hood to paint the fenders underneath where the hood is, so there's paint lines everywhere. But it's good enough for a driver. There's some cracking and chipping, but it's, like I said, it's good enough for a driver, and I just touch it up every year. There's really no rust or rot in the car. There's no patch panels on it. I pulled the body off, cleaned the frame up and painted that, and painted the underside of the car, but there's really no rot in it at all. When I first bought it, it had the original wheels on it, but the tires were pretty dry rotted. So I figured if I had to beat new tires for it anyway, I might as well put the wheels on it that I wanted. So the first thing I did was put some 16-inch 1935 wheels on it. Then I went right through the car and just did a bunch of maintenance stuff, a bunch of odds and ends that had been neglected over the years. I went through and fixed some wiring and changed out the headlights to halogen bulbs. And then I just drove it for a couple of years. So I also changed out the main leaf of the rear spring and the front spring to lower the car a little bit. So I originally bought the car with the intention of building a traditional hot rod out of it. When I got the car, I realized it was just too nice to do that to. So I kind of made a deal with myself that I would make some changes to the car, but nothing that was permanent. So everything that's been done to this car is a bolt-on only thing. So if for whatever reason anyone ever wanted to change it back, which I doubt would ever happen, it's possible to do that. And that's where I came up with the name, the bolt-on hot rod. But after driving it for a couple of years, I decided there was more that I wanted to do to it. I wanted to try to get it a little bit lower, put a higher compression head on it, and try to clean up some of the surface rust that was there. So a couple of years ago, I ended up pulling the body off of it, cleaned up all underneath, the subframe, the floor pans and everything, and repainted that, repainted the frame, and went through and redid some of the suspension, changed a few things. So I'm going to take you around now, and we're going to look at this last round of changes that I made, and probably the way the car is going to stay for a while. So here in the back, we're running the stock rear axle and stock rear brakes. I did change out the spring. This is currently a AV8 spring made by Old Yankee Speed Co. Now what they do is take the width of a Model A spring, but they put the arch of a Model T spring into it, which is a little bit harder arch and flatter on the end, so it makes the car sit a little bit lower. And I took, I believe, 2 leaves out of it. I think there's a total of 6 leaves now. I ended up using the original Model A top leaf because it has beveled sides on it, which fit better into the crossmember. And then when you remove leaves, you need to cut old leaves off for spacers to take up the gap so that the U-bolts will still fit. So that's why these really short leaves are in here. And I just noticed I forgot to cut the center bolt off, so I'll have to do that too. We're running tube shocks in the back. These are actually gas shocks, so it doesn't ride that great. I'm currently trying to find some hydraulic shocks that will replace those. So sliding underneath here, you can get a better look at the Mitchell overdrive unit. I haven't driven it with this yet, but I hear good things about them, and hopefully it makes it a little more fun to drive. As you can see, the floor pans have all been repainted along with the frame. As I mentioned, I swapped out the original wheels for these. These are 1935 16-inch wheels. I'm running 700 16s on the back and 550 16s on the front. Now up under the front here is where it's seen a lot more changes. So the axle's been swapped out. This is a 1933 to 36 axle. There are 32 to 34 Perch pins and 32 to 34 spindles. Running a Posies reverse side spring. I think I took 1 or 2 leaves out of that as well. The brakes are actually 1935 brakes, which are the widest and biggest diameter of any of the mechanical arm actuated brakes. So these are a great upgrade from Model A's if you can find them. Also running a steering stabilizer into here and the stock Model A wishbone. You can see from back here I'm running a shorter pitman arm on it, which gives it a little bit easier steering, and also Offenhauser friction shocks up front here. So we'll take a quick look inside here, and as you can see, the interior was recovered in this lovely orange material. So I'm assuming this was probably restored in the 60s or 70s, because I don't know anybody in their right mind now that would use that stuff. At some point I'll swap the door panels and the rear corners back out for more original looking material. The headliner and upper panels, I believe, are original. As you can see here, there's a second stick for the Mitchell overdrive. Noticed a few changes under the hood as well. I swapped out the original cylinder head, reproduction 6.0 to 1 Winfield head. It does have an alternator on it. It's still a 6-volt system. So now that you guys have been formally introduced and you're just like old pals, it's time to get into the fun part of the video. We're going to start doing some mock-ups. Now, as you notice, there's no headlights or bar on the car. I haven't quite decided what I want to run just yet. So I've got a few setups over here we're going to take a look at, and we'll mock them all up. We'll see which ones we like. So here's the setup that I was running on the car. This is the original headlight bar, original headlights, and turn signals that I added when I bought the car. They worked fine. They looked all right. It's just your basic Model A stuff. Painted bar, stainless housings. Everything was in good shape. I wanted to try out a dropped bar, so this is the one right here. This is from United Pacific, I believe, makes this. It fits really well. I did some mock-ups. If you guys happen to follow me on the old socials there, you probably saw a few pictures I put up of mocking up with this bar and a few other sets of lights. I had an original set of guides that I tried to mock up on, and they look pretty good on the car. However, they really didn't match the finish on the car because they're pretty weathered. The car is actually still pretty shiny, and I really didn't want to refinish them because they have a really nice patina to them, so I think they'd look better on a shitty paint car. So instead, I do have a set of these reproduction guides that I found on the shelf downstairs. These are also made by United Pacific, I believe. These are actually really good for a car if you're going to drive it. They're H4 bulbs, LED turn signals, so you'll actually be seen. The downside of these is they are 12 volts, so if I end up running these, I'll have to probably convert the car over. I'm pretty sure they don't make 6-volt LEDs for that. But I want to mock it up anyway, see what they look like. The other option is this set of lights, which are just stock Model A lights, except they're commercial lights, which the only difference is the housings are painted instead of stainless. I'm just trying to break up the tremendous amount of stainless on the front of the car. And a little more black in there will definitely help with that. We're going to try all these different setups on here and see which one looks best. So first off, we're going to throw this original setup that I had on here back on here just to see what it looks like. So that's the stock setup. Again, not bad looking. Here's option number 2. This is the commercial lights on the original headlight bar. I think that's better. Breaks up the stainless a little bit. You're definitely having the blacked out sections on the grill along with the headlight buckets. Adds a nice contrast, I think, to the stainless. Here's the next option. We got the dropped headlight bar on with the commercial stock lights. I thought about painting the headlight bar. I'm not entirely sure if I'd want to leave that stainless or painted, which way it would look better. So here's the next option. Third, fourth, fifth, I don't know where we're at. These are the reproduction guide lights. These are the ones made by United Pacific. I'm not so sure I like the look of the bulb in these. They stand out, they look a little strange. Housings look alright. I don't know. I think I'm going to grab the original set of guides and throw those back on there and just see what that looks like compared to these. Here's an original set of guide 682s mounted up on here. I definitely like the look of the lenses better on these. This has the sealed beam bulbs in it. I think those look a lot more correct on this than the reproduction ones do. I'm going to grab one of the repop ones and just swap one of these out so we can do a little bit of a side-by-side comparison. So here's one of each. Obviously the repop is the one on the left, original on the right. I guess it doesn't look as bad as I was thinking. Now that you compare the two, it's not a huge difference. I do still like the original one a little bit more, but the reproduction one isn't as bad as I originally was thinking it was. The top marker light stands out a little more, obviously, because it's an LED on the reproduction one. But really, I don't think it's that bad. I am still toying with the idea of painting the bar black, so I might do some photo chopping, see what that looks like with a black bar on it. Here's the last comparison. This is one of the reproduction guide lights along with one of the commercial lights. I do really like those commercial lights. Just having the painted housings makes them breaks them up a little bit from the all stainless stock version. I don't know, what do you guys think? What should I go with on this? Too many choices. Let me know what you think about it. Hopefully this helps you guys to visualize your setup if you're kind of in the same position where you're not really sure what you want to run for lights. Maybe you don't have 14 different lights laying around. Well, that's all for this one, and as always, thank you for watching. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. There's going to be some big news coming out in the next couple of weeks about the 31 Roadster project, and you definitely don't want to miss that.